If you thought you'd seen it all, think again. This is Spill News, where moments turn into headlines and whispers turn into wildfire. Because tonight, one press conference flipped the internet on its head. One pause, one sentence, and suddenly, everyone swore Shedeur Sanders had just said too much. The clips started flying. The captions got louder. And before the night was over, two names were trending right next to his: Josh Allen and Jeudy. Coincidence or calculated chaos? See, on the surface, it sounded calm, controlled, professional. But online, people heard something else. A tone, a subtext, a message that felt personal. The blogs lit up. Fan pages froze the frames. Reaction channels rewound the tape like it was evidence. If you were in his position, same pressure, same expectations, same spotlight, what would you do? Would you stay quiet? Or would you let the truth slip just enough for people to connect the dots? Because the internet couldn't believe it. And trust me, you won't either. Some said it was confidence. Others called it disrespect. A few insiders whispered, "Bro said too much, and now they're nervous." So what did Shedeur really mean? And why did those names land so hard? Let's break it all down, slowly, carefully, because the deeper we go, the uglier it gets. Shedeur Sanders didn't walk into that room like a man looking for forgiveness. He walked in like someone carrying a weight he didn't put on himself, but still had an answer for. Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned forward. Everyone pretended this was just another routine media day. But the tension said otherwise, because this wasn't really about Chicago. It wasn't about turnovers. It wasn't even about a loss. This was about perception, pressure, and the quiet war between expectations and reality that follows certain last names everywhere they go. From the outside, Shedeur's rise looked effortless. 5-star pedigree, prime-time bloodline, a college run that felt cinematic. But inside the league, nothing is handed out. Respect is rented by the week, and rent is always due on Sunday. One bad game doesn't erase talent, but it does invite vultures. And the moment the ball hit the turf in Chicago, the whisper started. Too confident, too flashy, not ready. Same script, different rookie. What most people forgot is that Shedeur grew up inside pressure, not adjacent to it. Inside it, cameras didn't arrive after success. They were always there, every throw dissected, every facial expression analyzed, every word replayed. That kind of upbringing doesn't make you soft. It makes you calculated. And that's why what he didn't say in that room mattered just as much as what he did. Because while reporters framed their questions like they were checking boxes, Shedeur heard something else. He heard comparisons. He heard challenges. He heard ghosts of quarterbacks past who were measured against impossible standards and then blamed for not reaching them fast enough. And hovering over all of it were two names that didn't need to be said out loud to be felt. Josh Allen, the prototype everyone loves to reference when talking about patience. Raw early, mistake-prone, given time, given grace, and eventually crowned. Every young quarterback knows that story by heart. It's the example teams use to preach development, while fans use it to demand instant greatness. And then there was Jeudy, a receiver with expectations of his own, a name that carried promise, frustration, and unfinished business. A player who knew what it felt like to be labeled before the story was complete. So when Shedeur spoke about completions, about timing, about trust, the internet didn't hear football talk. It heard coded language. It heard frustration wrapped in professionalism. It heard a young quarterback refusing to point fingers, which somehow made people look for fingers anyway. Blogs, pause clips. Accounts added captions. Read between the lines. They said, "He's telling you something." And slowly, a narrative began to form. Not because of what was proven, but because of what could be imagined. Anonymous insiders started appearing in comment sections. Screenshots without sources floated through timelines. Claims of sideline tension. Claims of closed-door conversations. Claims that certain veterans weren't as supportive as they appeared. None of it confirmed. All of it believable enough to spread. That's how these stories always start. Not with evidence, but with alignment. A bad game. A quiet room. A few carefully chosen words. And suddenly, fans think they're watching the early cracks of something bigger. They start mapping emotions onto faces. They replay pauses like confessions. They turn restraint into accusation. Shedeur stayed calm through it all, almost too calm. And that's what bothered people, because outrage is easy to categorize. Calm is suspicious. Calm makes people assume you're hiding something. Or worse, that you know something they don't. And when he talked about pressure not fazing him, some heard confidence, others heard a warning. Behind the scenes, the locker room noise didn't match the online chaos. Teammates kept working, coaches kept teaching. But the league doesn't move at locker room speed. It moves at internet speed. And the internet had already decided this wasn't just about growth. It was about hierarchy, about who gets time, about who gets blamed, about why some quarterbacks are allowed to struggle publicly while others are interrogated for it. Every quote Shedeur gave became a Rorschach test. Fans saw what they wanted to see. Supporters called it maturity. Critics called it deflection. And in the middle of it all, two careers were being dragged into a story they never asked to be part of. Because once names enter the conversation, intention stops matching. Josh Allen's past was suddenly being relitigated. Old clips resurfaced. Early career stats reposted with captions asking uncomfortable questions. Why was he allowed to grow? Jeudy's history followed right behind. Drops highlighted. Frustration moments replayed. As if the internet needed proof that tension was inevitable. None of it came from Shedeur's mouth. But somehow, it all traced back to him. That's the danger of speaking carefully in a loud world. Silence gets filled. Context gets rewritten. And before you can correct it, the story has already moved on. Inside the building, there was a growing awareness that the outside noise was no longer background static. It was shaping expectations in real time. Young players felt it scrolling their phones. Veterans felt it in the questions they were asked. Coaches felt it when normal film sessions started, including reminders about staying insulated. This is how seasons tilt without anyone noticing. Not through explosions, but through erosion. Shedeur's responses kept circling back to the same ideas. Work, representatives translation, progress, words that don't trend well, but build foundations. And yet, those same words are being reframed as subtext. When he said relationships take time, people heard fractures. When he said pressure excites him, people heard ego. Reaction videos multiplied. Experts broke down syllables like film study. One former player claimed the room felt cold. Another swore he'd heard frustration in the tone. None of them were there. All of them were certain. Certainty is the most contagious thing online. Momentum was building faster than facts could catch up. The story felt live, moving, unfinished. And once a story reaches that stage, it stops belonging to the people in it. It belongs to whoever tells it loudest. Everyone sensed the ground shifting, even if nobody said it aloud. What people didn't realize was that this was only the first chapter. Because the more attention this moment got, the more pressure it created behind closed doors. Conversations that were supposed to stay private suddenly mattered. Body language on the sidelines started getting zoomed in on. Every incomplete pass felt like evidence. Every handshake felt staged. And as the next matchup approached, the questions got sharper. Not just about football, about leadership, about accountability, about who really believes in who when things stop going well. The kind of questions that don't have clean answers, only consequences. Shedeur knew this game wasn't just being played on the field anymore. It was being played in narratives. And narratives don't need facts to survive. They only need momentum. But what came next wasn't a quote or a clip or a stat line. It was something much quieter. Something that didn't leak immediately. Something that would change how this entire moment was remembered. And when it finally surfaced, even the people rooting against him had to admit they didn't see it coming. The shift didn't happen on camera. It happened online. Quietly at first, the way real storms always do. A deleted tweet here, a screenshot there, a clip reposted with a different caption, then another. By the time anyone officially responded, the narrative had already solidified in the public mind. This wasn't just a rough rookie stretch anymore. This was being sold as a fracture, a hidden divide, a story people swore they could feel even if they couldn't prove it. One anonymous post claimed a closed-door meeting had gone left. Another insisted there was tension between timing routes and trust reads that had been ignored for weeks. No names, no proof, just enough specificity to sound real. Sports blogs ran with it, carefully hedging their language while letting the implications do the work. According to sources familiar with the situation, multiple insiders suggest the oldest tricks in the book, but they work every time. Then came the alleged messages, grainy screenshots floating around fan forums, a supposed DM from someone claiming to be close to the QB room. It talked about frustration, about feeling like the margin for error wasn't the same for everyone, about watching veterans make mistakes that didn't get magnified the same way. Real or not, it hit a nerve, because fans already believed the system wasn't fair. This just gave them a reason. Reaction channels jumped on it like oxygen. Freeze frames of sideline shots slowed down to quarter speed. Analysts pointing at nothing, drawing circles around body language. See that, they'd say. That's not normal. One clip showed Shedeur sitting alone on the bench, helmet on, eyes forward. Completely normal, completely silent. But paired with the right narration, it became isolation, alienation, proof. Josh Allen's name re-entered the conversation in a way that felt intentional. Old interviews resurfaced where coaches talked about patience, about letting him learn through mistakes. Graphics compared early career interception totals. The implication wasn't subtle. Why did one quarterback get room to grow while another was under a microscope from day one? Nobody accused anyone directly. They didn't have to. The contrast of the damage on its own. Jeudy's involvement became messier. A blog post hinted at misaligned expectations. Another referenced missed reads and visible frustration. Suddenly, every incomplete pass between them felt loaded. Every shrug was a statement. Every glance was a message. Even when plays broke down for obvious schematic reasons, the narrative refused to adjust. This was no longer about football. This was about sides. A so-called leak audio clip circulated for a few hours before disappearing. It was low quality, hard to verify, a voice that sounded like someone venting, talking about doing your job and still catching heat. No names mentioned, but captions filled in the blanks. The internet decided who was speaking before anyone could deny it. And once a story is decided, denials feel like admissions. Sarcasm became the fuel. Because nothing says team chemistry like blaming timing. One post read. Another joked about accountability season, with a laughing emoji and a screenshot of a press conference quote taken completely out of context. Humor made it easier to digest, easier to share, easier to believe. Insiders started doing the rounds on podcasts, some careful, some reckless. One former player hinted that rookie QBs learn fast who really has their back. Another said, not everyone wants to grow together. Again, no names. But the shadows were clear enough for people to project onto. Clips of these takes travel faster than any official statement ever could. Behind the scenes, the silence was doing more damage than any rebuttal. No fiery denial, no unified front, just business as usual. Practices, meetings, film. But silence online doesn't read as professionalism. It reads as guilt, or fear, or strategy. And every option feeds speculation. Fan reactions split hard. Some defended Shedeur fiercely, calling him the only one willing to take accountability in public. Others accused him of passive-aggressive leadership, of hiding criticism behind we language. The middle ground disappeared quickly. You were either blind or awake, loyal or delusional. The most dangerous part wasn't the accusations. It was the timing, a tough stretch on the schedule. Pressure-heavy defenses, national broadcasts. Every upcoming game felt like a referendum, not just on performance, but on the truth of the narrative itself. If the offense struggled, it would be proof. If it clicked, it would be dismissed as temporary. Even mainstream outlets started tiptoeing closer. Headlines asked questions they didn't answer. Is there more going on? Reading between the lines. Television panels debated leadership styles like they were diagnosing a relationship. The football got lost somewhere between the segments. And still, no one could point to a single moment where Shedeur actually crossed a line. No quote attacking a teammate. No dig at a veteran. No ego explosion. Just repetition. Calm. Focus. Work. Which somehow made the situation feel even stranger. Because scandals usually come with fire. This one came with restraint. And restraint made people uneasy. The pressure reached a point where even neutral observers felt it. Commentators started acknowledging the noise before plays. There's been a lot said this week. They mentioned casually, as if it was common knowledge. And once broadcasters acknowledge a storyline, it becomes official whether it's true or not. Then, just when it seemed like the narrative had peaked, another detail surfaced, buried in a long-form article. A single paragraph most people skim past. It mentioned a meeting, not a confrontation, not an argument. A meeting requested by Shedeur himself, focused on alignment, on communication, on making things cleaner. Normal quarterback stuff. But the timing of that meeting changed how everything else looked. Because suddenly, the story wasn't about a quarterback throwing shade. It was about a quarterback trying to take control before the noise did it for him. And that reframed everything that came before. The pauses, the careful words, the refusal to name names. The internet didn't slow down, but a crack appeared in the certainty. Some people started asking different questions. Not who's at fault, but why did this get so big so fast? And once that question enters the chat, the narrative becomes unstable. What nobody expected was how the next phase would play out, because the fallout wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was personal, quiet, and it would hit hardest where cameras rarely look. The aftermath didn't explode the way people expected. There were no locker room blowups caught on camera, no subtweets from verified accounts, no dramatic unfollows. What happened instead was quieter and somehow heavier. Practices felt sharper, meetings got shorter, conversations that used to happen out loud started happening behind closed doors. And in the NFL, that kind of shift is never accidental. Shedeur stopped over-explaining. Where he once answered every question with layers of context, he began trimming his words down to essentials, not because he had less to say, but because he'd learned how quickly words could be bent once they left his mouth. That change didn't go unnoticed. Analysts called it growth. Critics called it retreat. But inside the building, it was seen as something else entirely. Control. The noise still followed him. Clips still circulated. But the tone shifted. Instead of hunting for cracks, people started watching for results. Every throw became symbolic. Every third down conversion felt like a rebuttal. Every miscue reopened old threads. It was exhausting, but it was also clarifying. Pressure, when it doesn't break you, eventually reveals you. Josh Allen's name slowly drifted out of the headlines, but not out of the conversation. The comparison had already done its work. Fans debated patience versus privilege, development versus entitlement. The league's double standards were dissected in long threads and late-night shows. Allen himself never responded, which only added to mythology. Silence, again, became a mirror for whatever people want to see. Jeudy's situation unfolded in a similar way. There was no public fallout, no statement, just football, routes, timing, work. And slowly, the film started to look different. Not perfect, not dominant, but more aligned. Small adjustments that don't trend, but win downs. The same people who swore there was a rift now argued about whether it had ever existed. The internet rarely admits it was wrong. It just moves on. What lingered was the emotional residue. Because even when a story fades, the people inside it remember how fast it turned. How strangers spoke with certainty about their intentions. How speculation felt more powerful than truth. That kind of experience hardens you, or it sharpens you. Sometimes both. Shedeur addressed the team one morning before practice. No cameras, no quotes leaked. Just a few minutes about responsibility, about alignment, about letting work speak louder than narratives. According to someone who was there, it wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. The message was clear. Whatever people think is happening, this is what's actually happening. And if you're here, you're part of it. That moment never went viral, but it mattered more than any clip ever could. As the season pushed forward, the questions changed. Less about controversy, more about resilience. Commentators started reframing the early chaos as a trial by fire. The same voices that once questioned his leadership now praise his composure, not because he'd said something new, but because he'd survived the noise without feeding it. Still, the damage couldn't be fully undone. Trust with the media was altered. Every future answer would be weighed against this moment. Every pause would be replayed. That's the cost of being young, visible, and unwilling to perform outrage on demand. Some fans still swear there's more to the story, that something real happened and got buried. Maybe they're right. Maybe not. The truth in these situations usually lives somewhere unglamorous, between routine meetings and ordinary frustrations, not explosive enough to headline, too human to monetize. What's undeniable is how quickly perception tried to outrun reality, how a handful of phrases turned into a full-blown scandal without a single confirmed betrayal. It was a reminder how modern narratives are built, not on facts, but on momentum, timing, and the need for drama. Shedeur never exposed anyone in the way the headlines promised. What he exposed was something else entirely. The way pressure distorts listening. The way silence gets weaponized. The way young quarterbacks are asked to be perfect before they're allowed to be patient. By the time the dust settled, most people had already picked a side. And that's the part that doesn't change. Stories like this don't end cleanly. They dissolve. They leave impressions instead of conclusions. The season kept going. Games were played. Wins and losses stacked up. New controversies replaced old ones. But this moment stayed bookmarked in the public memory as a turning point, not because of what was proven, but because of what it revealed about how quickly a narrative can outgrow the truth. And somewhere between the clips, the captions, and the debates, one quiet fact remained. The people at the center of the storm never said what the internet swore they did. The damage came from interpretation, not accusation. That's the real twist no one wants to admit. Because the most dangerous scandals aren't the ones built on lies. They're the ones built on silence, assumptions, and the human urge to connect dots that were never meant to touch. The cameras moved on. The headlines changed. But the lesson stayed. And it will surface again the next time a young voice speaks carefully in a world that only rewards noise. Before you scroll away, let this sit for a second. Because stories like this don't end when the video ends. They linger. They resurface. They change how players are viewed long after the noise dies down. And the real question isn't what the headline said. It's why so many people were ready to believe them in the first place. Did Shedeur Sanders really expose anyone? Or did the internet expose itself again? Think about it. One press conference. A few calm answers. No accusations. No names thrown under the bus. And yet, an entire scandal was born overnight. Careers dragged into debates they didn't ask for. Narratives built faster than facts could keep up. If you were in that position, rookie quarterback, national spotlight, every word dissected, how would you have handled it? Would you have clapped back, stayed silent, or let the work speak and take the hits? Because whether you're a fan of Shedeur, Josh Allen, Jeudy, or none of them at all, this story exposes something bigger than football. It shows how fast perception becomes truth, how silence gets turned into suspicion, and how easily momentum replaces evidence in the age of clips and captions. Now it's your turn. Do you think this was blown out of proportion? Or was there really something deeper going on behind the scenes? Was Shedeur unfairly targeted? Or is this just part of the NFL pressure cooker? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Argue. Debate. Bring receipts if you have them. And if you want more stories like this, the ones that live between the official statements and the internet chaos, hit that subscribe button, because these narratives don't disappear. They just wait for the next moment to explode. Stay locked in. This story may be quiet now, but it's far from over.